Twin Dragons is Jackie Chan's first double role, where he plays a pair of twins separated at birth. Twin Dragons originally released in 1992 in Hong Kong and 1999 around the world. Was it worth seeing back then? And is it worth seeing now? Let's see what the critics have to say. But I do remember seeing it at Blockbuster everywhere. The DVD was everywhere. You couldn't go anywhere without seeing that poster. It's almost like iconic for me. But I've always liked Jackie Chan. Especially in his earlier work, he really combines that comedy with his martial arts and his stunts. I think the majority of the time you're watching a Jackie Chan film, especially the ones made in Hong Kong, for the stunts. It's not his best, but it's not his worst. I think it's definitely like solid right in the middle. So that's my bias. The reviewers here are either going to reinforce my bias or make me change my mind. And by change my mind, I mean they're wrong. So if they don't agree with my opinions, they're going to go in the bad pile. Our first review comes from MIT. Twin Dragons, one Chan too many. Twin Dragons is perhaps the weakest of Jackie Chan film released stateside. One of the reasons for this is that Twin Dragons is not an action comedy. Because the film is primarily a comedy, a silly slapstick comedy of mistaken identity. My initial thought is to disagree with him, right? I have to keep in mind this is 1999, and so you haven't seen his whole body of work. And I think it's a fair point. So again, he said it's the weakest of Jackie Chan's films that came stateside in 1999. And I think I would agree with that, because he had a lot more films, both good and bad, that hadn't come over yet. I think a lot of them haven't still come over yet. So I think it's fair. Like I said, I think overall Twin Dragons is like in the middle of what he's done in general. But at that point of the things that were like dubbed in English in 99, I would agree with him. It probably was the weakest. And then he makes the comment that it's not an action comedy, it's more of a comedy. And I actually agree with him, because rewatching it, I did realize there isn't as much. I mean, there's a lot of action, but it's not as, how would I put it? It's not as crazy as some of his other films. And the focus is definitely more on the mistaken identity than the action itself. And like I said, there's still a ton of action. There's still some really cool set pieces, some really cool, intense action fights, settings, and things like that. But it's not like Police Story or something like that, where it's just insane that he's doing like life-risking stunts and stuff like that. So it's not to that level. But there is some good fighting. There is some good, stuff like that. And again, in general, most of the stories in a Jackie Chan film, especially his earlier stuff, you're not really going there for the stories. They're just kind of piecing together the set pieces, and that's okay. So I think overall it goes in the good pile. Even though I disagree with him, I do think it's worth watching. Like I said, it's not his best film. It's not Chan's best film. I do think this review goes in the good pile. Our next review comes from Jesus Freak Hideout. In the end battle sequence, Boomer takes on the gangsters at a car testing site. Chan does everything from barely escaping a car speeding towards him, to fighting in a car wash, to brawling in a steaming heat testing room. He highlights the best part of any Jackie Chan film. It's the action, and specifically, just like the other reviewer said, it's that final fight scene. So this is good. This is just in the first two paragraphs. You already know what to expect. This is looking like a really good review. Overall, the movie was good. It's not a great movie for the reasons of the plot, corniness, and overdubs, but Chan's double presence and awesome stunts make the picture, and in essence, save it. I couldn't give it any lower than 2.5, but for the above reasons, couldn't give it any higher. Jackie Chan fans, if you like him, you'll like this movie. And for people who want to be introduced to Chan, rent Rush Hour. So what have we learned? Have the reviewers convinced us that I'm wrong about liking this? Of course not. They're crazy. But I think most of the reviews we saw, they fall in line with it, that this isn't Jackie Chan's best film, but it's not his worst film, at least post 1999, right? Everyone agrees the ending fight scene is why you watch this. The humor, just like humor in anything, is very subjective, right? Maybe this a little bit more so because it's made for a Hong Kong audience in 1992. So if you're going in for an action comedy, you'll still probably like it. If you're a Jackie Chan fan, check it out, absolutely. There is some really cool stuff in there. But don't hold your breath, it's not his best stuff.